Hi, friends. I am so excited to be here today, and I'm going to be interviewing a good friend of mine, Suzie Franyo. And this is the first time I've done a live on Instagram with the intent of sharing a screen. So let's see. Instagram's telling my followers that I'm here. I see Suzie Webster, author, has joined. And let me see if we can figure out how to add her to our chat. Hey, Jocelyn. All right, so let's see if I can add Suzie. Go live with Suzie. I cannot wait for you all to meet Suzanne. Okay, we're here.
We did it! Yay!
I so needed this today. I'm so glad I'm here with you. You're blonde. You're so blonde.
I know.
This is
I
exciting.
don't have a little phone stand like you do, so I'm having to hold it.
Okay. Well, so Suzie, have you done a Facebook Live before?
No.
Not Facebook.
Yeah.
Where are we? We're on Instagram. Sorry, we're on Instagram Live. Yes, and our goal is to be able to save this and then also be able to share it on Facebook. We did a quick test run yesterday, and Facebook was not quite as cooperative. So anyway, we're excited to have you all here. Just a little background. I have known Suzie a long time. When we both worked for the same company over 25 years ago, I have some very memorable moments with her. Can I share a few things?
Oh, sure.
All right. So for those of you that don't,
I have nothing to hide.
I know you don't. I know you don't. So, Suzie is the author of a series of books. She's just finished her third one, and I have read all three. And I tend to read things that are more work related and self-development type things, and I always
Maya.
have. Maya's watching. Great. When I'm reading her books, so normally I'm listening to Audible or podcasts and self-development things, but when I'm reading Suzie's books, it is purely for leisure, and it's so fun. So she is, I can tell you this. I don't normally read romance, so I don't have a lot to compare. Like, my only thing I think I've ever read in the way of romance, and I assume it's romance, was the 50 Shades, that series. So I'm not sure that I am a great person to speak about romance novels, but I'm so excited to have Suzie here chatting with you all and sharing my experience. But just so you can get to know her, when we first met, I remember doing a drive. We were headed from Fairfax towards Centerville, and she was expressing to me the importance of self-care. Do you remember that conversation?
No. I'm not surprised.
And she was referring to that from a sexual standpoint, and super confident. So that was one of my first memories of getting to know her. And then we happened to be on a company-sponsored trip, and we were in Aruba, if I remember correctly. Yep. And you were there with, I think it was probably your significant other boyfriend at the time. And I was there with my mom, and had a coworker that I had been dating a bit or a lot. And next thing I know, he says to me, Suzie said I should propose. Right? She's like, clearly the ultimate romantic, especially if my husband proposes to me with Suzie says I should propose.
I'm sure what I said is, you're not going to get any better than that. What are you doing?
So I remember going back to my mom in the room and being like, oh my gosh, Tom proposed. She goes, was he drunk? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, don't say a thing tomorrow. Wait for him to say it again.
That's right.
And then over the years, Suzie had kids first. You've got 3 daughters. Let's see. Riley is the oldest, and she's now engaged and getting married. Katie, who is a singer, artist.
Yeah.
And Reese, your youngest, who's in high school. So it's always fun to share the stories back and forth.
She's going to kill me, but yeah.
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk about it.
I love you,
Reese. We should talk about the kids.
I know. This could go on for hours.
It could. People have nothing else to do, right?
3 daughters is painful.
And I can only imagine their conversations with you about their sexual relations and the sort. So,
yeah.
Anyway, she's total mom boss. She used to live up here in Virginia, and we worked together for years. And then you all moved to South Carolina well over a decade ago and have made Charleston home. Drew, your husband, is the most wonderful guy. And it's funny, like as I'm looking at Jake, and somebody asked, a question about, where do you find your inspiration? How do you create the characters? So I'm curious to learn more about that. But being in Charleston, South Carolina, what made you decide, what was your moment? Because I feel like you've always been a writer, and this has probably always been in the back of your head. Yeah. What was the moment that you said, I'm going to sit down and start writing?
Well, and that's exactly what happened. I had been doing event planning for about 10 years and had just finished up and kind of shut down an event that I had done for 9 years. And I was just burnt out. And I told my husband, I said, I really don't want to do events anymore. I'm kind of burnt out from that. So I said, I got to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I have always liked to write. And I actually my sister found a book I wrote when I was 11. Facebook page, but I had written in my author bio that I wanted to grow up to be an author or an actress. So, 1 out of 2 is not bad. But yeah, so I said I've always wanted to write books, and I love romance, I love sex, and to be honest, I'd also been thinking a lot about kind of how sorry, my dogs are barking for my attention. I had thought a lot about how I could kind of raise the awareness of women, especially women over 40 or who have been married or with their partner for a long time, kind of opening up the conversation to talk about sex. And I said, I think one way I can do that is if I write some romance novels, some sexy romance novels, then maybe I can kind of start that conversation and grow a fan base and get women talking about that. And actually I've been able to do it really, really successfully. I've sold a few books, but I've also done speaking engagements and different things. So it's been a great way to kind of open the door for women to start talking about their sexuality. And that's kind of what I wanted to do.
Yeah, you definitely lead with confidence there, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's always been, and I just did I was speaking at an event, a women's expo, a couple weeks ago. And one of the questions I asked, I was like, where do you rate your sex life in your priority of your marriage? And I was surprised how many women, like 1 through 5, rated their sex life as 4 or 5. I was like, whoa, that's terrible. Sorry, I got to put my dogs out. They're being really
That's okay. We understand real life, work at home, right?
Bye-bye.
So you decided to start writing to help other women, and it was at a moment when you decided you wanted to put your what you had been doing aside. So how long? I feel like that was 2 years ago, or how long did it take you to write your first book?
It was literally a cliche New Year's resolution.
Okay.
I was like, well, I'm just gonna start this. I'm gonna try to write a book. I sat down like after the first of the year, and I'd written like books when I was younger, but not to this level. And so I really wasn't sure even how to get started. I hadn't taken a class or anything. So I kind of started writing an outline and started just creating all the characters. And frankly, I feel like that's the key, is the characters are the key. I think that if you can create a world and a group of characters that people want to engage with, then you can take them anywhere you want them to go. But if the characters are good and you're not attached to the characters, then it doesn't really matter what the premise is of the story. And I've read some books that are really well written, the plot's really good, and I just don't like the main character. And I won't continue reading those books if I don't like that, if I'm not engaged with the character.
And I have to say, with your books, I think the first one was Revival on King. Like, I have definitely fallen in love with the characters. And when I've opened up the books, I keep reading. I stay up all night until it's done type thing. I've fallen in love with the characters, but I loved it as you went on to the second book, Seduction on Sullivan that you carried the characters forward but focused on someone else's story. And it was definitely the way you write, and I'm not sure if this is common or not, but every other chapter was his or her perspective, which was interesting to learn, and you really got to know them. But this one was a fun surprise to me, Jake, and this was designed to be like a 2-hour read, and it's digital on Kindle. I literally had to message Suzie and go, how do I get Kindle? What do I do? Like, that's how little I read. I definitely listen to Audible and different types of books. So, but what I loved, I was like, who the heck is Jake when I first started reading? But like, he was the guy that had caught the other, was it Everly's attention?
Yeah. They went on a couple days. They went on some dates, and he really liked her. And
right. And then all of a sudden he disappeared, and you're like, oh, poor Jake.
Yeah.
But then you brought him back with a short, fun romance there. So, people always say a book kind of takes you away. I mean, what a better place to go in a book than to Charleston, South Carolina. I mean, I'm reading it going, I want to move.
Charleston is 100% a character in the books. I mean, that is my intention. I mean, I did grow up in Northern Virginia like you did. And I do love the rolling hills and stuff of Virginia, especially Western Loudoun County. But outside of that, I mean, Charleston, it just has my heart. I mean, it's my adopted home, and I love everything about it. You know, I love the people. I love the, bless your heart and all that stuff is kind of hilarious. But it's, the people are at heart great. And I've just we've lived here for almost 14 years, and there's just an endless amount of things to write about, restaurants. And I have a lot of friends who are restaurant owners and favorite restaurants to go to. So I just love to write about that. And it's great being a small city. It's awesome, like how supportive the people are here. I mean, I've had the last book I released, Seduction on Sullivan's, I had a big scene in a local restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant I asked him, I said, I'd really like to have like a release party there, just like a happy hour, something kind of chill. And he's like, oh, no. I'm going to do a fixed menu dinner. Like, we're going to base it on the scene in the book. And he did. I mean, he took the scene out of my book and the things that I talked about and menu items I talked about and made a menu. And we had not only a happy hour, but we also had a dinner that people could come to and get signed books. And he promoted it and I promoted it. And it was really such a fun collaboration because I'm so passionate about food too. So it was nice to be able to kind of combine all the things I love the most. And, to have someone do that, I mean, that's incredible. Like, and one of the best restaurants in Charleston, no less.
Well, and in the books, your characters are very social and going out to restaurants and bars, and not having been to Charleston in a lot of years.
Yeah.
In my mind, I was trying to picture if they were real restaurants or not. Yeah. So that's kind of fun. Like, even by the name of the restaurant, are they real?
Yeah, the restaurants are real. I mean, I do change the names of the characters in the book, even the small ones that, other than Nico, which is the restaurant that I had my release in, because the restaurant's Nico and the chef is Nico. So I can't really change the name. But he's fine. He's good.
That's fun.
I said I changed the names to protect the guilty and all that.
Yeah. So when you're painting the picture of the house on the water and the boats, and King Street, are those real scenes? Like you've been stood in those places?
Some are. Probably the biggest question I get asked from the first book is if the people can go to the inn that's in the first book. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not
oh, darn.
I made that up. But a lot of people ask me that. They're like, oh, is there really a southern lady inn? And I'm like, no. But the restaurants are all real restaurants. Yeah. Few have closed down. So
do you know those architects? Do you know the design decorators? Like, are those inspired by real architects?
No, all that's made up. And like the condos that there is kind of continuing on through all the books. They're building they did a condo renovation, and the condo revival on King Street is the name of it. And it kind of comes up in the later books too. And that's all made up.
Oh, come on. I want to move in. It's so good.
Know, right? I want to move in too. I'm like, God, could someone build this place for me, please?
Yeah, right? I mean, if anyone needs inspiration of what to build, Susie's got it for you. Because
it's so fun to create that world, because then, like with the book you just finished or the novella, Jake, I mean, he lives there. So
Yeah.
it's like the first book started with them. They're renovating this apartment community and making this awesome, like, downtown urban condo project with a rooftop pool and all this stuff. And, you know, and then by the time we get to the third book, now people are living there and some of the characters are living there. So it's kind of nice to, you know, like Melrose Place, just like trying to create, you know, not only just the characters, but the settings that are still the characters. And I got an awesome, I got an awesome review on Goodreads recently on the first two books. And nothing's more exciting than to get a review from somebody like, oh my gosh, that's not my mom. Like, it's someone who's not related to me, or I don't know. And she made me feel so good, because that's what she said. She was like, you know, she just is so in love with the characters, and she loved the fact that she could follow along, and they do appear in the other books, even though each book is a standalone romance. So you still get the fun of, you know, the slow burn, or the, you know, the meeting, and then, you know, finally getting together and the happily ever after. You still have that in each book, but all the characters from the previous books kind of pop in and out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one. Like, I message you like, when's the next one coming out? I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm working on it. I've been a little bit distracted recently, but I just turned 50. So, you know,
happy birthday.
I've been celebrating that for like a month, but
both you and your husband Drew both turned 50, and
well, I turned 50, he turned 51. So
okay, I'm sorry, I knew you,
he's my sugar daddy.
Birthday within a few days of each other, and
we do have the same birthday almost, but he's 1 year older.
I heard y'all shut down Vegas.
We did. They shut it down for us because they heard we were coming.
No one else can.
We got there before they shut down Vegas, I guess. Yeah. So I feel lucky that we got to get in and out before all the
Yes. Yeah. So you have a lot going on between the birthdays and a wedding coming up. And so I'm curious, what is your family's response to you writing about sex, or writing sex scenes, from Drew to your mom to the girls? What is their response?
Well, my married name is Franyo. And my pseudonym, I write under my maiden name, which is Suzie Webster. So Drew kindly asked me if I would maybe consider writing under my Webster name instead of the Franyo name.
Interesting.
After he read some parts of the first book, but they're actually not. I mean, on the scale of, you know, books, I mean, I think we're maybe kind of brushing up against erotica, but we're not. I don't think we've crossed the threshold completely. Especially because I read a lot of books. I probably read 3 to 4 books a week, and most of them are contemporary romance or something in that genre. And some of them I read, I'm like, wow, wow.
It's research.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, mine are, I call them realistic romance, you know.
I agree.
You're reading and it's not, you know, you want to feel like you're there and it's actually happening.
When I'm reading them and my husband notices that I'm sitting down, you know, like, and finally says, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm reading one of Susie's books. His radar just pops up and he's like, oh, is it really smutty, sleazy, sexy? Do you want to go upstairs now or just stay down here? Like, he thinks it's such a turn on when I'm reading these books, and he is visualizing probably some of those other books that you're reading that you're like, yeah, I think I need to tone it down to realistic. Yeah. So, but it is amazing how excited he gets at the idea of me reading one of your books. So
I've had a couple guys read my books, and one of the guys who read them was messaging me, and he had never read any kind of romance, and he bought the books to support me, which was very sweet. It's like, Charleston, yay. But he finished it and he was like, oh my gosh, I'm buying these books for all my friends. Like, all of my friends need these. He's like, it's a marriage saver. And I'm like, exactly. Like, you know, that people just don't, you know, people don't realize kind of what they're missing out on. I did a book club, and it was a Brazilian book club, and all the ladies read my book, and I went to their book club, and one of the women, who was in her 50s, said to me, she goes, you know, I haven't read this type of book since I was in my 20s. And she goes, I just was amazed at how much I enjoyed it. And she said, my husband, who is 10 years younger, is always bugging me you know, to have sex with him. And I'm just like, oh,
Begging.
whatever. And she said, I was reading your book and it was like the middle of the night. And she said, I got to chapter 9 and I was like shaking my husband, like, wake up. She goes, it was unbelievable. She goes, I just didn't even realize like that they do serve a great purpose. I'm like, yeah, I mean, then they're very entertaining. Like if you want to, if you're stuck in your house for the next 4, 6, 8 weeks, for however long we're going to be stuck here, you know, it's a fun way to pass the time. Both reading the books and the results afterwards, if you have a significant other.
Right. And what about the Websters? Bonnie, Becky, Rick, what do they think?
So my family's really supportive. They're all about it. And I was actually really surprised too. Like even my mother-in-law, who's a little more conservative, was so proud. Like she was so proud of me that I had written a book. I had it published. It was, people were talking about it. And she was like, and she read it. She told me she skimmed through certain parts. But she said it was actually really good. She goes, I really enjoyed it. Right. And I'm just amazed by the people who are reading it and who are enjoying it. And the greatest compliment to me is if people feel that the writing is good. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I want the writing to be good. I mean, it's not supposed to be highbrow. I'm not Anne Rand or anything like that. But, you know, I want people to read it and not be like, you know, think that it's written by an 8th grader.
Right. No, I think you're a great writer.
No 8th graders are allowed to write that kind of stuff.
So, and then of course, does everybody think, do your friends all think or ask you, am I in it? Are you writing about me? Yeah. Does Drew think the character is him? Does your future son-in-law think it's him? Like, how do we interpret this?
My friends, I have had friends who are asking to be in the books.
Oh.
So I'm starting to kind of do a little bit of that. Like, and here's the thing, like the first 4 books in the series are inspired. The first book was inspired by Drew and I. And the main character, Luke, in the book has a lot of Drew's kind of mannerisms and things he likes. And people who know Drew, even the physical description, people were laughing. But there's a little piece of Drew in all of the guys I write about, you know, and I like, you know, I try to mix it up because you want all your leading men to be different and unique. And some women like men who are like the alpha male, and some women like kind of the nerdier, you know, more sensitive type. So I'm trying to kind of embrace all kinds of men in all the books, but there's definitely a little piece of Drew in all of them. And all the females in the books are inspired by my girls. So while they think that's a little weird because I'm writing a sexy romance that is inspired by them, I'm like, their personalities and their interests are inspired by my girls. And it sure is a lot more fun and easier to write when you have somebody kind of in your mind when you're writing it, you know?
Sure. Just from their character, or their interests, for sure.
And the book, the novella Jake, which is the Kindle book, he came about because my publicist was so in love with that character in Seduction on Sullivan's, and she was like, I really wanted him to get the girl at the end. And I was like, what? And she's like, he needs his own book, and I want to be his love interest. So I did kind of use her as inspiration for his love interest. She's an Italian, spicy Italian girl. And that was really fun for me. And she was like reading it, like blowing up my phone. She's like, oh my gosh, no one has ever captured me so perfectly. And I'm like, really? Okay.
That's awesome.
So it's nice that they like it. But sometimes you're thinking about people when you're writing stuff because it makes it easier to, you know, infuse the characters with a real personality.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed reading Jake, and it was just a little too short. I wanted it to keep going for sure. But oh my gosh, like one of my hobbies is, you know, especially for all my single friends, I'm like, I'll man shop for you. Like, I want to be where these guys are that you're writing about.
Oh, I know.
You know, how you create them visually and also their personalities and the sort. I'm like, where are these men?
Yeah.
So
some of my male friends are like, when are you going to write about me? And I'm like, okay.
Inspire me. All right. So speaking of which, Ashley Thompson asked, how do you find new ways to write sex scenes?
So I do seriously read. Sorry, letting the dogs in again. It's a maniac here. I do read a lot of contemporary romance, and so I get a lot of ideas from them. Not that I'm copying what they're doing, but it kind of helps when you're reading a lot of that. Can you take them out, please? That helps, and maybe some experimentation at home.
Ah, poor Drew.
I know. I'm like, sometimes I'll be writing something and I'll go, is this physically possible? I need to see if this could actually be done, what I'm describing.
Can we try this again so I can really get it in my memory?
I've read books where I'm like reading something. I'm like, are you serious? You can't actually do that. I don't know if that's possible.
I know you and Drew and the girls do CrossFit, and I'm sure that helps from a strength and endurance standpoint.
Yes.
So, and I feel like when you choose where to work out, you're like surrounded by really good looking people.
Oh, heck
too,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks,
I mean,
thanks for sharing those
that's
photos.
That's why I do CrossFit. I've brought a couple of friends to my gym, and they're like, now we understand. I'm like, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
One of my favorite social media posts ever was like when you're calling for models for the front of the book.
Oh my gosh. That was the craziest day. I'm like, I did not expect that to happen. I was like, I was getting private messages. It was crazy. I'm never going to do that again. Just if you could have seen some of this stuff that people were sending me. Like, this is my brother, my husband. This is me. I mean, one guy was like blowing up my phone. I'm like, dude, like, seriously, no. You look like somebody's dad. I'm like, no.
Oh, goodness. All right, let's see.
Here's
another question.
I'm wearing on my Cell and Dot.
I see the coat, the shirt,
everything.
The
Old
earrings, the necklace.
school Cell and Dot. Yep.
Love it. All right, another question we got was, do you ever feel silly writing the books?
Sometimes I'll tell you. My first book, Revival on King Street, is about to come out on Audible, and so I actually hired someone to read the book. She's in Seattle. Hi, Peggy. I don't know if she's watching, but anyway, so I auditioned a bunch of people, and she was someone I went to high school with. She owns a theater company in Seattle, and she's always been an actress. And she said she reached out to me and said, I want to get into recording audiobooks, and are you going to do that? And I said, well, coincidentally, I've just put my book out on ACX to try to find someone to do the reading. And so kind of time went by, and I could not find anyone that I liked. I auditioned a bunch of people. I didn't like anybody. And it's really hard to do. I mean, it's really hard to do an audiobook. But anyway, so I reached back out to her and I said, are you still thinking about it? Because I just can't find anybody, and I would really like for you to audition. So, and with the Audible books, the person who is doing the voice work, they do all the production too. So you have to have a studio, you have to have all these things. So she had been spending some time setting all that up. So she was like, well, I figured you'd already found someone, but I'm about done with my studio. So yeah, I would love to. So she did, and she did a great job, and I loved her. So I hired her, and we finished and all that. And so she sent me the finished book, which I had to, of course, listen to proof it. Mm-hmm. And I'm listening to her reading my book, and I'm like, oh my gosh. First of all, I didn't have any idea there were that many sex scenes in that first book.
But you didn't have any idea?
I didn't remember. I was like, I'd written the second one, which was a much more of a slow burn, so there wasn't as much until kind of the end. And so when I was listening to Revival again, I'm like, gosh, these people are like rabbits. What the heck? So yeah, so that was kind of funny, and that was a little embarrassing, and I kept laughing as I'm listening to it. And she was like, are you laughing at her because it's funny? Why are you laughing? And I was like, well, some of it's funny, but some of it's like really embarrassing. Like, oh my God.
And you hear it in your voice. I can only imagine hearing it in someone else's voice.
Oh,
It's got to be odd.
Oh, yeah. And she changes her voice. And like, Everly has more of a Southern accent. And so all the different characters have different voices. And she does the men too, which she does a good job of that. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of wild. So that's probably more embarrassing or when someone else is reading my book, or when I have my book signings and I read aloud from my book. That's incredibly awkward for me to do.
Hmm.
Which I'm rarely uncomfortable or embarrassed, but when I have to read my own writing, it's terrible.
I'm surprised. I'm really surprised.
Yeah.
Interesting. So then another